Ciao e bentornati, welcome back to Pillole d'Italiano. Nell'episodio di oggi, episodio numero 115, a grande richiesta parleremo del passato in italiano. So we're going to tackle the past, and hopefully this short episode is going to help you get past the confusion around the Italian past. Before we start, I'm just going to ask you a favor. Take one moment to subscribe to the channel. If you're new to it, but even if you've been watching these videos for a while and for some reason you forgot to subscribe, that is the best way that you can support the channel. So please take a moment and do it. And then of course, let me remind you now, why not? You can always use the comment section below to leave comments, to practice, create sentences, ask me questions, request episodes as well. Today's episode, as I said, was inspired by your request. Some people find the Italian past tenses very confusing. A lot of people actually do find them confusing, so here I am, try to help you get past the confusion around the Italian past. As I would love for everyone to be on the same page, today I'm going to focus on two types of past that grammatically speaking are called imperfetto and passato prossimo. I'm not going to tackle the passato remoto, which is the type of past tense that you will find a lot. If you love reading in Italian, you will find it in reading. In speaking, it's used only in a few regions like Sicily, Tuscany, but if you use that passato prossimo instead of passato remoto, you will be understood. And also, when you get to the point of discovering the passato remoto naturally, quote unquote, it's kind of intuitive, so you will understand what's going on. You will understand the verb that the past is coming from and the subject. That's why I don't want to, quote unquote, waste time talking about it, because not a lot of you will actually need to use it, and if you do, you will be able to pick it up. I'm confident. All right, now let's unpack those two grammatical definitions that I just gave you, those two grammatical tags, imperfetto and passato prossimo. What am I talking about? The imperfetto, just so you know, it's simply any type of past tense that has a V in its termination, in its very ending, except for the verb essere that always does something particular, right? So essere goes to ero, eri, era, etc. But any other verb will have that V in the ending, and that's the imperfetto. So camminavo, mangiavi, andavamo, etc., etc. Passato prossimo, like the name itself suggests, is a verb in two chunks. So you will have essere or avere as the first chunk, and then the second chunk in the past tense, what we call past participle. For example, ho mangiato, siamo andati, sono venuti, etc. Now, this is a super quick debrief. If you are not familiar at all with these two types of past, then you can just watch this episode. A lot of stuff probably will go over your head, but it's also fine. You will take time separately, independently, to study the different types of past and how to form it, and then you can come back and watch this again. And just so you know, even if you're very, very familiar with how to conjugate verbs in these two tenses, imperfetto and passato prossimo, it might take you months, if not even years, to learn how to use them like a native speaker. It takes a lot of exposure. What do I mean by exposure? I always recommend taking something that is meant for native speakers as your source of Italian input, as a source of information in a native language that comes in, right? So that you can replicate little by little, learn by mimicking. There is no better way than improving a language or improving the way that you write, for example, even in your own language, than by reading. So here I am. I actually brought a book for us today. I'm not going to read it all. This is, by the way, Va dove ti porta il cuore, di Susanna Tamaro. I'm sorry, the cover is a little shiny, but this is a book that I read the first time when it came out. I was, I think, 9 years old. Oops, I'm dating myself. Anyway, I was still in elementary school when this book came out, and I read it for the first time, and I loved it. And it is a book that I love to go back and reread every now and then. It's not that complex in terms of writing, so I will just encourage you to pick it up if you're interested. What I want to do right now is to read just a super brief passage where we're going to find both verbs conjugated at the imperfetto and the passato prossimo, and then we're going to take it from there. Da quando sei andata via non leggo più il giornale. Non ci sei tu che lo compri e nessun altro me lo porta. All'inizio provavo un po' di disagio per questa mancanza, ma poi piano piano il disagio si è trasformato in sollievo. Ok, so let's go back and kind of analyze it. Da quando sei andata via, non leggo più il giornale. Non leggo più il giornale, that's your simple present, so let's not worry about that part of the sentence. But da quando sei andata via. Da quando, since when, sei andata via. You left. Sei andata is the verb andare in that passato prossimo. Now, let's move on to the second sentence of this little short paragraph. All'inizio provavo un po' di disagio per questa mancanza. Ok, so the verb. All'inizio provavo un po' di disagio. Provavo, you have a V, that's the imperfetto. Okay, let's just pay attention to this, then we're gonna go back later and dissect it. Piano piano il disagio si è trasformato in sollievo. So, piano piano il disagio si è trasformato in sollievo. Here the verb is si è trasformato. Now, we have actually three components to this verb because we're using the reflexive verb trasformarsi, so that si belongs to the reflexive. The verb itself is è trasformato. So the verb trasformarsi, this is that passato prossimo. Now, if I were to say why we're using sometimes that imperfetto and why we're using that passato prossimo, is mainly to give the listener the idea, both things happen in the past, right? But the idea that some actions, some events occurred once, one and done, as I like to say it, and for those we use that passato prossimo, and some other events happened for a stretch of time, or maybe it was a habit in the past, and for those we use the imperfetto. So if we're going back to the text, sei andata via. Is andare via, to go away, something that you do once or something that you keep doing over and over again? Intuitively, andare via is something that happens once. Sei andata via, you left. You cannot keep doing it. It was not really a habit, well, unless it's an abusive situation where somebody disappears every now and then, but in this case, you left, it happened once. Sei andata via, that's why we're using that passato prossimo. But all'inizio provavo un po' di disagio. Provare disagio is to feel. Provare is to try, but also to feel feelings. So to feel uneasiness, a little bit of uneasiness, disagio. And the fact of feeling that feeling, it's something that went on for a little while. So all'inizio, at the beginning, I was feeling those feelings. All'inizio provavo un po' di disagio. It went on for a little stretch of time. Even if that inizio was only one day, it went on for a full day. That's what I'm picturing as an Italian speaker when I hear somebody using that imperfetto. But then what happened? Il disagio si è trasformato in sollievo. So the uneasiness transformed itself into sollievo, relief. And the moment of transformation is a moment. That transformation could only happen once. And that's why the author is using that passato prossimo. It would not work if you were to use the imperfetto here. Il disagio si trasformava in sollievo. It sounds like it was happening over and over again, that it was a daily occurrence maybe. In the morning, I used to feel that uneasiness, and then in the afternoon, it always happened that the uneasiness became relief. So you see, by changing that passato prossimo into an imperfetto, you will change the depth of meaning. You will change the whole scenario. Those two past tenses are not equivalent at all. Now, take a deep breath. I know that this is a lot and it sounds very philosophical, right? This is the reason why I say that it takes months, if not even years, of exposure to this specific distinction between passato prossimo and imperfetto to actually absorb it so that it becomes a second nature, so that you start thinking like an Italian thinks. Because it's not just a matter of learning like a parrot and repeating the endings and the terminations. It needs to become second nature, and you will develop that feeling for what sounds right, what feels right, and what doesn't. So it will take time for you to be able to develop that Italian sixth sense and to feel the difference between era una bella giornata and è stata una bella giornata, because both of these sentences can actually be translated in English as it was a beautiful day. But when you say era una bella giornata, you are describing it, you're giving me a sense of how it was as it was progressing. And when you say è stata una bella giornata, you're telling me it was one and done. So you can, yes, translate them kind of in a similar way, but for us, for Italian speakers, it really feels different. The intention behind your choice of the imperfetto versus the passato prossimo changes, is not exactly the same, even when the translation is exactly the same in English. It takes a while to develop that sense. Be patient, porta pazienza. There is no rush. The best thing you could do is really to read a lot in Italian. I'm recommending reading rather than watching TV or listening to podcasts, because with a physical book or with an audiobook, you can pause, you can go back, you can take your time. But of course, any type of native content is absolutely perfect as long as you are enjoying it. That's the most important thing. Bene, se questo è un argomento di cui vorreste andare a fondo, if this is a topic that you want to see the bottom, so to speak, I am available on a quarterly basis, more or less, to lead very small groups through what I like to call a deep dive. Those are micro courses. They last 4 to 5 weeks, depending on the topic. They're usually only open to my existing clients and the graduates from the Italian crash course, because I need to make sure that the people that participate in the courses, they have that basis, that foundation to be able to follow along. When it comes to that passato prossimo versus imperfetto that we talked briefly about today, and when it comes to prepositions, for these two topics exclusively, I want to make them available to a wider range of people, though you will have to have a certain level of Italian to qualify, because it's a very active class where you will be required to participate and to write paragraphs or little stories to bring in to each lesson. I'm really going to use the material that you're going to bring in to help you in the way that is most tailored and it makes sense for you. So in order to make sure that you have that minimum requirement level, you can go and click in the description of this episode below. You will find a link. By clicking on it, you will be able to register for a consultation call with me, completely free of charge, so that we can chit chat a bit. You can let me know which one of these two topics you're interested in, if not both of them. I will make sure that you have the minimum level that is required to be able to participate, and then you can reserve your spot. As I said, I launch these micro courses every 3 or 4 months. They're open to a very limited number of people because I want to have the chance to follow each one of the participants very closely. What this also means is the fact that every time I open one of these courses, they sell out within 24 hours. I'm not kidding. Well, this is your chance to come talk with me, see if you qualify, and if so, reserve your spot. So click on the link below that you will find in the description. We're gonna take it from there. All right, it's time to let you go and digest what we talked about today. I truly hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, don't forget to like it, and I will see you super soon in a week. Ciao, a presto!